Claudia Bunge, welcome firstly to Strive 365 and welcome back to Melbourne.
Thanks, GT. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Hey, look, we've had a lot of footballing adventures, haven't we, over the last potentially 7 or 8 years. Firstly, through New Zealand secondary schools, then the New Zealand under 17s qualifiers, World Cup in Jordan, New Zealand under 20s qualifier, World Cup in France, FFDP, couple of seasons at Melbourne Victory. You left, went away for a couple of years, and now you're back for season three. So yeah, out of all of those, there's some career highlights for me. Is any memories stick out more fondly than others for you?
Yeah, wow, you listed a lot there. We really go way back, don't we? I think, yeah, like the World Cup for 17s and 20s are definitely a highlight for me. Especially I think the under 20s World Cup was especially memorable for me. I think we had a really good group, and yeah, we played France our second game, I think it was, and we drew, and yeah, that was pretty awesome. And I think they went through to the final. So that was unreal. And my 2 seasons at Victory with you, obviously, going back to back champs was, yeah, definitely something that I will hold on to and something I will never forget either.
Yeah, two of my three top three coaching moments involves you, right? So back to back in the A-League Women's, and yeah, that draw with France and France at under 20s level, in yeah, home nation favourites of the World Cup. Uh, Crazy crowd. Yeah, with trying to do our best, and I thought we equipped ourselves well. But yeah, keeping Amory, Kokoto, and a few others who are established French national team players now to a clean sheet is a tremendous effort. But as a central defender, you didn't start off as a central defender. When I first selected you at under 17s, I picked you as a right back. You started the first game from memory against Mexico in the World Cup. We made a personnel change for the second and I think also the third from memory. So you
Hmm.
definitely didn't play a lot. And it was sort of that next kind of year you went away and maybe with some feedback from myself in New Zealand football. And
Hmm.
collectively, the decision was let's change positions. Let's move you from a right back to a central defender. Some rationale behind that with your qualities, but the lack of depth in that position at the time. So you've gone through a quite a big transition at this age, right? This pre-performance age we're talking about. Just take me back to that time. Like, what were some of the thoughts around that? Your decision? Was it in your mind a necessity? Was it something that you felt you were forced into? Yeah, because this is probably a question that we haven't spoken about on the pod before, but I think
Hmm.
people and athletes may be faced with this decision, right? Like, do I need to alter my position? Maybe do I need to change codes in order to make it to high performance? So, yeah, take that as you wish.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, I think that was quite like a pivotal moment for me. I mean, I was still like 16, 17, so I was still young enough to, make that switch and I think like learn the role of a centre back. And I think you're still quite moldable at that age. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed fullback because I could go forward, even though I'm not super attacking. I just liked like the physical output of that position. Um, and yeah, I think like the teams before, everyone kind of plays like winger or plays up top, in their like lower level club teams in New Zealand. And then yeah, it's not until coaches such as yourself go, hey, we don't really see you as such an attacking threat, which I'm definitely not. I'm definitely more defensive. So yeah, I think that feedback from you was quite pivotal for me. And the games that I had at centre back, I really enjoyed. And yeah, it's a position where you need to play it a lot and get more experience. And I think when I was, after 17s and then between the next 20 cycle, I spent a season at Glenfield Rovers. What a club. Just, learning from people like Liz Milne or Liz Savage, who was playing there. And yeah, kind of like rubbing shoulders with some of the older girls I was playing club with. And yeah, I feel like in like 1 to 2 years or 1.5 years, I went from not really knowing too much about centre back to getting quite familiar with it and actually really enjoying it. I really like being able to see like the field of play and kind of like picking the tempo, when to go, when to kind of keep the ball, when to penetrate. So I kind of like determining that from the back. And I think around the same sort of time, I sort of started to find my voice a little bit at the back. I was quite a quiet kid and was pretty shy, but then, yeah, I got named captain of Glenfield Rovers at like 16, 17 years of age. And I was like, Andy, I don't know what the hell you're doing. I'm like telling 30-year-old women like how to play football who have, been in the Ferns, been in age group. So I definitely had like tall poppy syndrome. But it kind of like forced me out of my shell. And yeah, I've been playing the position ever since, and I'm still learning a lot. I think as I move up, to professional football, and now that I'm in and around the Ferns, I've still got like a lot to learn, and I'm still quite young. But yeah, I love being a centre back. And I literally can't play anywhere else. So I think I'm in it for the long run now.
Yeah, you mentioned Andy Clay, who I think was very pivotal, yeah, in that sort of transition for you, because here's a coach that buys into the idea that you want to do, your goals that you want to achieve. It's aligned to
Hmm.
maybe the national body is kind of thinking maybe this is what we can do. Here's a coach that's prepared to go, yep, let's put you in over some other players who maybe at that exact point in time might be a better fit, but long term maybe not have the same ceiling as you, and then double down by making you the captain, which brings out more responsibility, more leadership, more communication, which I think kind of that whole kind of perfect storm together allowed you the safety net, but also the people around you to push you forward into this sort of new challenge.
Yeah, for
It was sort
sure.
of on the back of that, right? We had fortunate enough in New Zealand football to start and set up the FFDP, the Future Ferns Domestic Program, where you were one of the first cohort of players to come in. Maybe just pull back the curtain on what that was like. Yeah, share some of the details and we can go from there.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, gosh, that was a while ago now, so I have to try to switch my brain on. But yeah, I think I was at Rovers, it must have been 2017, 2018. And then so I missed that first cycle at FFDP because of this positional change. And obviously I was way down in the pecking order in terms of local centre backs in the country. But yeah, I think, due to Andy and yourself and Rovers, I think in about a year's time, I developed a lot as a centre back, and then the following season got invited to FFDP, and yeah, I just think the switch from doing two trainings a week plus one game on the weekend with Rovers to 4 or 5 sessions throughout the week at FFDP, and then going on and playing against boys teams. It was just like night and day for me. And like I always wanted to play professional football. Well, before I knew it was football, I wanted to be like an Olympic athlete in whatever sport it was that I was going to do. But yeah, around 17, around this sort of age, I knew it was football. So yeah, I was just really happy to be spending more hours on the field. We were also doing like a lot more like training in the gym, which I hadn't done so much before. And yeah, I think just the like exposure to like higher hours of training has set me and a lot of my other teammates back then for being able to push on and play in professional teams and also break into under 20s and ultimately firms, because that's kind of the whole purpose of the program. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. It was a bit hard in the winter months, and we're training at North Harbour Stadium at 8 p.m. at night. But yeah, it was good, and I think we had a really good group. And I mean, I play with a lot of those girls now in the Ferns, and they're still some of my best friends. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time at FFDP, and I think it really helped me in my career.
Yeah, the purpose from our perspective, when I say our, I'm talking New Zealand football, was to create an environment that would replicate, mirror, or even be better than a standard professional environment that you would find around the world. Now, this we're talking about 2018, right? So the women's game in particular has moved on leaps and bounds, especially globally, but even in New Zealand, right? Back then, the
Hmm.
Phoenix didn't exist in the women's space, in the A-League women's space. So it was create an environment that would replicate, if not improve, be proved upon, which would ultimately serve identified players that had not only the potential but the motivation to, I want to be in this space and I want to go to high performance. They would in turn serve the football ferns, the senior national team, as well as possible, but then also try and get as many of these players out abroad into the professional ranks, which would ultimately have a knock-on effect and hopefully lift the football ferns as well. So think back to some of the names in that group. You had the first one we got out, I think, was CJ Bott. Then you had Michaela Moore, Katie Rood, Victoria Essen. You talk about yourself going to Melbourne Victory shortly. We had Malia Steinmetz, Grace Jale. I know I'm missing a few here, but there's a lot of pride. I have a lot of pride looking back at the work we did at the time, but then also kind of the legacy it's sort of starting to now filter in towards the ferns. You mentioned about playing against boys. So I think this is a pivotal question for female aspiring athletes in whatever code. Often they can play up a year, or they can play against boys, or they can play against, in a senior women's environment. What's your feeling around, your sport is football, right? But playing against age appropriate, stage appropriate boys, not like for like necessarily. How did that help or hinder your development, do you feel?
I think like in terms of physically, like playing against a boys team was really, really good for us. And like we were unbelievably fit back then. To this day, I think like I've probably never been as fit as I was back then. But yeah, I really enjoyed the challenge of it. It was quite hard though, because you'd get some boys teams that were, really, really good and, sometimes would get a bit of a belting just purely because, yeah, their speed of play is just so much quicker than like any women's team that we would ever play. And then on the flip side, you'd get some teams that just weren't that good. So I think like the spectrum of the teams we were playing, they were either like unbelievable or like maybe lacking a little bit. So I think like trying to find the balance there was quite difficult. But if you can find like a team, and I feel like under 15s, under 16s was probably like the better age group for us to be playing against. Obviously, we can't really be playing against fully grown men because we'll just get absolutely whacked. And then likewise, if we're playing really, really young, that also I found wasn't the greatest. But yeah, like physically, I really enjoyed it. And then we also additionally so we would do that during the winter, and then in the summer we'd also get the chance to play National League. And I think that's really important for players to, be in a team where you're working towards winning a championship or like, so there's that sense of pride for your team and there's a goal. I think sometimes when you don't have that and you're just training and playing games just to get fit and get physically prepared for World Cups and stuff like that, you can miss that a little bit. So I really enjoyed playing the boys in the winter and then going away with my regional team for National League and then playing in that tournament or that competition in the summer.
Yeah, it's not something we got right all the time, but it was a conscious effort to play maybe under 17 boys division or conference level, it was called, which, would give us a physical challenge, but less so technical or tactical. And that kind of was designed to replicate a Ghana or a Nigeria. We would play an under 14 Division 1 team, smaller, technical, that's designed to replicate Japan, right? So trying to find different opponents that have a relevance to the real opponent in the senior women's game was our objective. But I think also if we were only playing against boys, you lose that ability to play with and against your peers, which you therefore have different opportunities to provide different strengths, right? So go back and you be the leader now of your peer group against, 5 other groups from around the country. So it was a real conscious effort from us to try and allow our athletes to experience all of those. The other thing that from our perspective we were hopefully at least ask if this came through to you was it was about the individual. It wasn't about the team. So whilst we're playing against the boys, there was more of an individual focus, well, 11 individual focuses at any given time throughout that match rather than the team trying to necessarily win. How much of a focus do you feel is the good balance between individual versus team when we're now talking about environments that are this pre-performance phase? How selfish do you as an athlete need to be to put yourself ahead of the team? Equally, your advice to say me as the coach or the program lead around, did we not do enough of team preparation or team culture? Or do you think we could have done more individual and, who cares about the other 12 teammates, so to speak?
hmm Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for the program's purpose and I mean, there wasn't a cap on age, but a lot of us were around my sort of age, so 16, 17, 18. But then we also had girls that were maybe in between professional contracts coming back and playing and kind of maintaining their fitness and, being in a good training environment. So I think the individualized focus was really good, and especially for us younger players who were still really moldable and are still, learning the ins and outs of our positions. I definitely was at that point. I think that was hugely beneficial, but I did find that when we had pinnacle events, so 17s World Cup or 20s World Cup, it became a lot more team focused, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, I think, yeah, having the balance between the two is really important. But yeah, when there's no World Cups coming up or there's no big team events coming up, you're kind of knuckling down and trying to just become the best player you possibly can. And I think for the ages that we were at, that was really important. And then, yeah, I think it's helped my individual development a lot. And then now that I'm in a professional environment, it's very team focused, and we get to do individual stuff quite a lot at Victory, and yourself and Jeff like to incorporate that a lot into our trainings, but in other teams that I've been in, they don't actually do that. So, and I think it's a massive missed opportunity. So I think, yeah, FFDP is a bit different because it was quite an individualized program. But yeah, I think if environments can find a balance between the two, then it's just gold for players. And yeah, it's gonna just help with development massively.
My view as a coach now speaking, I have two objectives, or probably more, but two main ones, just to simplify it, is to improve the player and to win the game. So if I'm only doing one of those, you can improve the player at a pretty high performance level and be fine. But if I'm only improving the players and losing every game at high performance, I'm not in my job for it for very long. If I'm winning the game, but players aren't improving, well, all of a sudden the players aren't overly as happy as they could be, and retainment, recruitment, all that stuff becomes a challenge. So trying to do both, I think, is equally as important at high performance level, but I think HPAD level and even development level. But again, knowing that maybe the outcome of the game isn't as important as the long-term development of the player, and getting the right sort of coach as well as environment and the buy-in from the players to work down that up and down that continuum, I think is important. The second objective of FFDP, as I mentioned, was to get players abroad. Now at that point, no Wellington Felix A-League Women's, but your step abroad was into the A-League Women's, but it was here to Melbourne Victory, where we were able to reconnect. I think I'd been here for one season already, so it was my second season, your first season, which coincided with first championship, and then stayed again for the second season and back-to-back championships. You then left the last two seasons, and we haven't won. So one of my end of year reviews to the club was, we need more Kiwis. So we go and we go get Claudia Bunge back. So hopefully number 3 championship will come its way in April and May. So yeah, talk to me about that transition. How did that move occur? Was it through an agent? Was it through good luck? And then talk about the transition into Melbourne, and maybe the start of that leap into professional football, because the target audience here for athletes listening are people in this space, right? Under 20s equivalent, national team level, maybe senior environments a little bit, and now trying to make professional. And we'll talk about the next stages beyond that. But this kind of transition, people are either almost at or have just made it. So yeah, let's paint the picture, and then we can figure out what you learned.
Yeah. Yeah, where do I even begin? I think that like I said before, FFDP put me in a good space where I was able to develop quite rapidly over, I would say, like a 2 year period, and allowed me to become like a specialized centre back, um, which yeah, I'm hugely grateful for, and I think it was because of those performances at FFDP and which carried over into 20s World Cup that I was actually able to yeah get Jeff's the head coach at Melbourne Victory's eyes on me, and I probably have you to thank for that as well, Gareth, for that connection. And yeah, I remember when he reached out to me, it was pretty much a no-brainer to me. And I'd been following the W League for quite some time. And yeah, it was, yeah, I like the sound of the club. Yeah, I had maybe two chats with Jeff, and yeah, I was always wanting to go play professionally overseas, even if it was just across the Tasman, still counts in my eyes. And like you said, like the Phoenix wasn't even a thought because it didn't exist at that point. Um, so yeah, I kind of just grabbed the opportunity with two hands, and yeah, I think it was a really good move. Like you said, we did pretty well and won the championship in my first year and second year. I was there for a third year, but we didn't. We got knocked out by Sydney. So this will be my fourth season actually, which makes me feel really old.
I take,
Um,
I'd obviously blank that from the memory.
yeah,
Uh,
it's okay. I have as well.
let's just go back a little bit, right? So okay, so you now get an interest from a head coach of a club at a
Mhm.
different league. Firstly, how did that happen? Was it a random WhatsApp message? Was it a phone call? Was it an email? And then you had a couple of connections, right? So talk me through kind of the pre-bit, and then how did you then agree upon a contract? What's part of it is in the contract? Is there living arrangements? Just sort
Mhm.
of talk about, how did Jeff reach out to you first? How does this sometimes occur?
Yeah.
Through an agent, just through an email, and then talk about the next bit.
Yeah. So I actually think he emailed me. I didn't have an agent at the time. I didn't really know how any of that sort of mumbo jumbo worked. I was very, I was very foreign to, the whole professional scene. Obviously, I've just been playing like FFDP and like amateur level in New Zealand. So he actually just emailed me randomly out of the blue. And then yeah, we jumped on a phone call, and yeah, I think he had seen some games from under 20 World Cup where I think our defense in particular was super, super strong. And I was, yeah, fortunate enough to have a couple of good individual performances that tournament. So I think that's where he picked me up from. I actually don't know. Um, he just sent me a random email one day. And then, yeah, from there, negotiations happened. And my sister actually lives in Melbourne and has for the last like 12 years. So my first season, I was living with her, which was actually really nice. As yeah, like a 20-year-old that's never lived away from New Zealand. It was good. She'd like cook me dinner sometimes. And because she's a bit older than me, so she's kind of like a second mom anyways. So yeah, the first season was I think smoother than most people's experiences who go and move, to say England or to the Northern Hemisphere. It can be quite um, daunting, and you're kind of isolated. But here I had family. Obviously, I knew you, and it's also English speaking and very similar culturally. So um, yeah, the first season I didn't really know what to expect, and yeah, just tried to learn as much as I could. And yeah, we were able to be quite successful in the end. And I don't think anyone really thought we'd get as far as we did. But yeah, I think we just had a really good team and good coaching staff, and yeah, put us in good stead.
Yeah, like I'm struggling to think back clearly to the time, but I certainly would have been an advocator for you, right? Here's a player I've spent a fair bit of time with, developed, good character. I can speak on the behalf. Here's some footage from the World Cup.
Mhm.
What do you think? That was my role in this part of the puzzle, and obviously Jeff, has to make a decision. But for me it highlights is, we had a relationship as a player coach over 6 seasons, 5 seasons through different levels of environment.
Mm.
And I've now left and I've now advocated for you to somebody else, and that kind of
Mhm.
starts or contributes to the process, right? So people listen in and go, every coach or every person you come across can be an advocate, or I could equally have gone, Jeff could have said,
Nah.
hey, no, centre back. I've come across this girl, Claudia Bunge, who I think she was in your team, right? What do you think? And I could have gone, forget about it. No chance.
Hmm.
Never in our
Yep.
environment. And that would have been the end of the conversation, right? And then
Hmm.
that moment it goes. So yeah, it's something to be conscious of, that every bridge is or everything could be a door that you walk through or can be closed
Yep.
without you even knowing it. Without you even knowing it.
Hmm.
That's the thing.
For
So
sure.
yeah, being conscious of being of that, being nice to your coaches as well. That always helps. And going
Yeah.
from there. Okay, so now you've landed.
So,
Fortunate enough that your sister lives here, so that's a soft landing in terms of that transition. I think Annalie Longo Flea was here as well, so another
yep.
Kiwi you knew. But you turn up now we're in training, right? Pre-season, yeah, or even the start of the season.
Hmm.
What's the big difference now? Did you find from FFDP or National Women's League in New Zealand or Glenfield Rovers Senior Women's to now you're in a fully fledged professional environment? What's the big differences that athletes need to be aware of?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think just like finding my place in the team, obviously going from FFDP, which is hugely individualized, and yeah, and great in its own right, but yeah, going to a team where it's very team performance based. I kind of came in and I was a starting player, and yeah, I kind of came in not too sure, if I would have to work my way into the starting team, but yeah, Jeff had a lot of confidence in me, and honestly, I think the first few games it took me a while to find my feet, just get used to like the speed of the game. I remember my first game very vividly, actually. It was against Brisbane Roar, who were very strong that season. And I remember, I think I came up to you, Gareth, after the game, and I said, I feel like I've just played an international match. Because, yeah, the league here is very physical. I know we touched on that. I was playing against boys for a few years, but I think when you're playing against like fully grown women who are in and out of, the Matildas and other national teams, and yeah, athleticism is like a really big component in the A League. It kind of, yeah, it's just like different athleticism compared to playing against fast 15-year-old kids. So yeah, I think it took me a little while to find my feet. And then just like knowing my role in the team, and I was still pretty young. And our team was actually quite new as well. I think you guys had lost a few players from last season. We had a pretty much an entirely new backline apart from Angie Beard, I think, and Polly was kind of in and out of the team. So yeah, Kayla and I came in at the same time, and it took us a while to gel. And yeah, and I just had to be quite patient, I think, and really like listen to Jeff and yourself and like trust what you guys were saying. And then yeah, even though I was young and maybe a little bit inexperienced, just learning to be confident in my abilities. And then I think it was around like halfway during the season we started like doing really well and getting more results and keeping more clean sheets. But yeah, I think the first half of the season, it was just about finding my footing and just adapting to the style of play and the tactics of the club. Yeah, just as quickly as possible, really.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come back to my mind. Like we, after 3 games, I think we actually swapped you and Kayla to the other side. Like I think you started
Yes.
at left centre back, Kayla was the right, and we actually looked at it and thought, well, actually, I sort of said to Jeff, like Claudia's background was a right back, then into a right centre back. She hasn't
Hmm.
really spent a lot of time at central defence in comparison to say Kayla, and then also, maybe she's better and sees the game more as a right fullback than a left fullback. So
Hmm.
there was that sort of change. So there was that to deal with, kind of the left-sided central defender to begin with. I think you also got injured in like your second session. I remember you having your thigh strapped for like weeks, either
Oh
corky
yeah.
thigh strain. So
Yeah.
all these little different challenges that, going in, you just have to deal with, right? So my
Yeah.
question is, can you think back to things that you did really well in terms of um, people you reached out to, questions you asked, processes you had in place? Um, or if you didn't, like you would do now to make that transition a bit smoother?
Yeah, I think something that I learned pretty quickly is like maybe to use the staff that we had at Victory a lot more and like utilize them before like in New Zealand it's just we don't have as many resources, so you tend to like just do things yourself. Um like I would be before FFDP I was doing my own gym. I'd go to like my own personal physio. So you took a lot of responsibility and all of that stuff you had to do yourself. And I think a big learning curve for me was like to use the staff. And I'd had snippets of it with, age group and working with you, but using the coaches as well. If I didn't understand something, like not being afraid to ask questions and, no question's a stupid question. It's better than not asking and not knowing. So I think when I made that switch and utilized the professional help that we had at Victory, I think I started to learn a lot more and learn a lot faster. Um, and yeah.
I think we could, if we talk about today, we sort of fast forwarded, 5 years since that time. I think there's more clubs in the A-League Women's now. Some of the more senior, certainly Matildas, have kind of followed that trajectory of the FFDP. Right, they're now playing abroad in Europe. Some have come back now with Gilnick and Mika Yallop. So still a competitive league, but it might be a little bit easier. I use that loosely, but easier to find the way, especially Australian players, because they're not visa players, at that kind of 16, well, maybe not 16, say 18, 19 age, right, to find themselves in this professional environment. So that would kind of, for me, go back to our under 20 national team cycle at France, which is kind of FFDP as well. So similar question, thinking about national team football, national team preparation, in preparation for the Football Ferns, as well as FFDP and for professional football. Upon your reflections, like what do you feel you extracted as much as you could from, as you just spoke about, the coaching staff and some of the senior players and, the resources around that? Or, if we rewound 5 years, now knowing what you know now, would you tap into certain things differently, more of, less of? How would you think back to your time there at under 20 national team level? Has it prepared you as best as we possibly could, or could you have done more?
I think you can always do more. I'm pretty like self-critical on my performance as a player, and I think I definitely could have potentially asked more questions and gone to you and other coaches for more feedback more regularly. Um, and like you said before, like just using resources a bit more often rather than taking it upon myself to, do my own analysis of my performance, which is also super important, but maybe being a bit more collaborative with coaches and players around me. I think, like we've touched on, FFDP was quite individualized, but I think I could have maybe leaned on the girls that I was, competing with a bit more. And but when you're young, it's kind of, I feel like you're not really thinking like that yet. It's probably only recently, since maybe I've turned like 23 plus, that I'm really a bit more open to having those conversations. I think, as a young player, you're just kind of focused on, doing your job as best as you can. And then, you might get caught in the motions a little bit more. But I think as I've gotten a little bit older and spent a bit more time in, playing centre back and playing with older players as well, I think I've initiated more conversations. And I love, like, in Ferns, we work a lot in our defensive unit and it's really collaborative. And I feel like I learn a lot more from leaning on the older, more experienced players. I think coming into Victory, I was able to do that a bit more. And like you said, Annalie Longo was there. And she just is so wise and knows the game like the back of her hand. And we also had Lisa Devana. I think just like that was the first time I'd really been exposed to playing with players like that. And I learned so much from them. So yeah, I would, if I could go back, I would maybe have those collaborative discussions a bit more often. But I was also just a kid and just, yeah, maybe a little bit scared to initiate those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's a completely fair summation, right? And people, I guess one of my aims of having conversations and sending podcasts and hopefully having people listen and go, I've heard that before from other athletes, and me also saying, look, as a coach, we want players to ask more questions, to ask for more one-on-one time, to, can I have my clips, or I've looked at my clips, what do you think about this? So
Hmm.
to actually, we would advocate everybody doing that, but it's on the player, and we'll do as
Yeah.
much as we can to try and bring that player on that journey. But here's someone like yourself who, you could do more of that, might have made, that leap a little bit earlier, or
Hmm.
we'll talk about it shortly, the journey into overseas a little bit easier, but not to
Hmm.
be. You kind of brought in the Ferns there a little bit. So it was around this time, the move to Melbourne, and the first call up of over 30 at this point in your career into the football Ferns. How special was that? Was it something that you had planned out as part of your journey, your dream goal, or was it just another step? Talk us about senior national team environments.
Yeah, it was something that had been on my radar for, well, ever since I decided I wanted to give football a real good crack. Um, yeah, when I decided that, I want to make a career out of it, this for me is another step. It's definitely not the end step for me, and it still isn't. But yeah, I was absolutely rapt when Tom selected me. It was a China tour in 2018. And yeah, I was so excited, but I was also like so scared, as any players when they first get called into the national team. And yeah, I went in with, no expectations. I just wanted to, like I said before, like learn off the older players. And, we have a lot of amazing, or have and had a lot of amazing players in that team. And I think particularly like centre back is one of the strongest positions for the Ferns. So yeah, I just wanted to learn off them as much as possible and make a good impression. You go in wanting people to like you, obviously. And yeah, I my first tour I had a really good experience. The girls were super welcoming. And yeah, due to injuries, I actually started my first game, which was just crazy. Like I remember Tom telling me that I was starting against China, and I asked him, "Are you sure?" Um, and yeah, it was good. It was challenging, and I was definitely a little bit, not a little bit, I was extremely nervous, but I think sometimes getting just thrown in the deep end, it's kind of like fight or flight. And yeah, I think I was able to grow into the game. And yeah, looking back, I think coming on as a centre back in any sort of high pressure game is quite difficult. But if you're in from the start, you can kind of, you learn the tempo pretty quickly. So yeah, I think it actually worked out for me, and I didn't do too terrible. Maybe had a couple of errant passes, but wasn't terrible. And yeah, I've still been with the Ferns since, and yeah, I just love the national team. So yeah, that was yeah a pretty special time for me and my family.
Your national team CV reads pretty impressive. So let me just find it. So 31 caps and counting. Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, Paris 2024, Women's World Cup 2023 in New Zealand, which we'll get to in a second. OFC Player of the Year, Women's Player of the Year 2022, and OFC Nations Cup, so the World Cup qualifiers in 23, captain for a game. So captain of the national team. Talk to me about kind of that moment. Like, is that something that you was hoping for? Have you been part of a leadership group for a number of years? Was the captaincy that Andy put on you at Glenfield Rover, was that part of a master plan?
Yeah.
How does the leadership qualities how do you feel they've evolved over time? And is that something you would like to do more of?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I've become quite passionate about. And yeah, captaining my country was one of, if not the biggest honor that I've had in my career so far. Um, yeah, I'm grateful to Yitka for, giving me that opportunity. Yeah, it's another, along with my debut, it's something that I will never forget. Definitely nothing that I ever expected. I've been in and around the leadership group for the Ferns for a few years now. And even when that kind of came about, I was, yeah, a little bit unsure, but I think what they wanted was representation across all ages, which I think is really important for not just national teams, but professional teams as well. Because I think having a mix of, youth and experience is kind of what makes a team successful or not in most environments. So, yeah, that's kind of what I was put in the leadership group for. And yeah, I was, in my position starting to find my voice on the field. And I think coaches were looking at that and seeing that as, she could potentially help lead this team at whatever capacity. So yeah, and I think around must have been my second season at Victory, Kayla also unfortunately got injured. So I had to step up big time for our team. And yeah, we went through a bit of a funny period. I was playing with a different centre back pairing, I think, for 4 weeks. And it definitely took me a while to, yeah, find my voice again because was our captain. She's, one of the best players on the field, if not our best player on the field. So it left a big hole. And yeah, kind of like I said, with my debut, it kind of threw me in the deep end. But yeah, after a few weeks, I started to find my feet. So I think like around that season, 2022, I learned a lot in terms of being a leader. And I think that set me up well for Ferns as well. So yeah.
What's what is a leadership group? So you can speak to me about the Ferns one if you want. I'm not sure if you've been in other leadership groups. So firstly, what is it? What value do you see as a player does it bring to the group? Yeah, some things that maybe coaches thinking about implementing this, is it something you would advocate for? What are you going to be careful
Mhm.
about? You spoke about having a representation of different sort of ages. I think it's a great point. I hadn't thought that one through fully before, but yeah, what other kind of parts to leadership group can you share?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of work in this sort of space with Ferns over the last, I'd say, 4 years. Um, and yeah, I think it's hugely beneficial. Obviously, everything comes with its pros and cons. There's people that, on paper have more experience than other players who maybe aren't part of the leadership group. But I think, like what I said before, having like variation is really important. And the purpose is, well, for Ferns anyways, it obviously changes depending on, different teams and, different leadership groups. But for Ferns, it's just upholding the values of the team and ensuring that, with the different waves of players coming in and out of the environment, because it's a very, what's the word? It's a forever changing environment. So your place is never, you can't ever take your place for granted. The team changes from tour to tour. So I think, yeah, just having something like the leadership group, or we'd call it the Kaitiaki group, so the upholders of the team culture, is really important. And yeah, having, younger people in there, older people in there, people who are vocal, so the Ellie Rileys of the team who lead on the field, but also having people who are maybe a little bit more quieter in the background, who are maybe better one-on-one. So like I'm thinking of someone like Rebecca Stock comes to mind. I think having like a variation of different types of leaders, who, yeah, all share similar values and complement each other is super important. And that's kind of what the Kaitiaki group for Ferns is. And yeah, they selected that, our like psychologist at the time and the coaching staff selected it. And yeah, I think there needs to also be like a buy-in from the team. So I've been in teams where the teams also select the leaders of the group, and it's not like a hierarchy or anything like that. It's just something stable and something, yeah, a place that's safe for players to go to if they feel like they need to, raise anything, about, and they don't necessarily want to go to the coaches. So yeah, the ones that I've been a part of, I think they're hugely beneficial for teams.
Yeah, it's something that we have here at Victory, and it's you spoke about the players voting. We take that stance, and we ask the players to effectively nominate the one or two people that you feel uphold our values the most.
Mhm.
And it's kind of it works that way from a coach as well. Like sometimes we can't get around every single player as
Yeah.
much as we would like, so we kind of use the leadership group, which would meet probably once every fortnight. It's more of a check-in. Here's some information from us to disseminate across your peers, and then what other feedback have you got from us that can kind of get filtered through as well. So yeah, it's a really useful tool mechanism for performance environments,
Mhm.
but needs to be done in a skillful way. You spoke about, different camps and tours might have different players. You've been fortunate and unfortunate potentially in the same breath where you've had, three different head coaches for the national team in a reasonably
Mhm.
short space of time. All right, Tom Samani, Jutta Klimkova, and recently Michael Main for the Paris Olympics. So, um, you've also spent time with Jeff Hopkins in the ALW Women's for 3 seasons, coming to four. You had time abroad, and you had time with me through our youth national team. So, what are I guess are we completely different? Like, or are there things that you can see in all of us that are a positive trait that I guess developing coaches listening into this now can go, oh, maybe I'm not as strong in this. Maybe I need to go get further education in this part. Or
Mhm.
cool, that aligns with, you know, senior national team coaches and professional coaches across different countries. Like, yeah, what's your take, I guess, on those coaches I've mentioned?
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to be those. It could be your more formative coaches. What are the things that really resonated with?
Yeah, that's a really big question, and I think it's yeah, that's probably one of the most challenging parts of high performance sport is like that player coach relationship. Um, and because it's football is subjective, everyone has a different idea how the game should be played, um, what kind of players they're looking for, which makes the sport really interesting and vast. And obviously, no matter where you go, yeah, the coach's opinion of you can kind of determine your career. And yeah, it's pretty hard as a player, especially when, the coach maybe doesn't particularly like the way you play or your profile doesn't quite fit in with how they want the team to be playing. And I think, when I was younger, I think that would get to my head a little bit, as it does, I would say, for most people. But as I've kind of gotten a little bit older and I'm only 25, I've still got a shit ton to learn. But maybe just taking the things you can from the coach. So, um, and each coach has their different strengths. So taking those strengths and just trying to absorb all the helpful things as much as you can. But then also kind of stripping it back. And at the end of the day, you have to believe in yourself and you have to know your abilities and know what you're good at. So balancing that with taking, the useful information that the coaches are teaching you is really important. So kind of like finding that balance. Um, and yeah, I even think, like you said, I've been on the bench a bit for Ferns, but in the same breath, I think those are really big opportunities for me as a player. And although I may not see it at the time, like I could actually gain a lot from, riding the bench compared to when I'm playing and I'm starting, which is obviously great. But yeah, it makes you really appreciate the times where you are playing and kind of gives me a bit of a wake up call and a time to pause and reflect and go, okay, so this has been working for me up until now, but obviously I'm going to have to change things a little bit here, i.e., going to have to be a bit more smarter on the ball. So it kind of like gives me a time to pause and I can like start retraining and start practicing those things that those coaches are asking from me. And I found that a lot in Denmark, actually. I think, yeah, I played a lot for the first half of the season, kind of got injured, and then didn't really play much second half. And yeah, my coach was really open with me about, things I need to work on. And yeah, I spent a lot of time working on those things, which I think, and I'm hoping I can bring into Victory this season. But yeah, it's just taking what you can from those coaches, but ultimately you still have to like know who you are as a person and what you bring as a player. And yeah, being, flexible and open, but also, yeah, knowing your strengths as well is really important.
Yeah, it's quite uncanny. I was just writing some notes down and I'm thinking, are you talking to you as a player or like as I would be to a player or as me to a coach? So you spoke about knowing yourself. Well, I would say the same as a player. You need to know yourself, you need to know your strengths, bring your strengths to life. The same would apply to a coach. Who am I
Yep.
as a coach? What's my personality? What am I strong at? Not trying to be someone that I'm not. I think that's
Hmm.
taken a few years for me to, understand that, I have qualities, I have some deficiencies, and I have my personality. And me trying to be someone completely different gets seen through a mile away, and just that unauthentic self just doesn't work. So know
Yep.
yourself, be bring your strengths to life, go away and work on your weaknesses, no different to a player. Have
Hmm.
that balance. So, again, am I always at this end or do I need to be here? And if I'm thinking about maybe building a staff, so I think Jeff and I work like I've said this before, like yin and yang, right? We have different
Hmm.
strengths, different sets of experiences. We view the game, we're completely aligned with how we view the game and what we want, and we work super well together, but we have this different, we come from different perspectives. And you spoke
Hmm.
about riding the bench. So sometimes you need to humble yourself, even as a coach, right? And go, okay, I'm not the main guy here. I'm not starting. What can
Hmm.
I sit back and observe and learn? How do I use the game that's going on in front of me as a metaphorical sense and learn? So when I get put into the game, I'm ready to go. And
Yeah.
I'm absolutely at my peak. So yeah, speaking to you sharing advice to players is no different to me giving advice to coaches. I think it's quite a nice synergy. You spoke about Denmark, so let's bring this move now into play. So 3 years in the A League Women's, you get a big money move to
Not big
Denmark,
money.
HBQ, I think I pronounced
Yep.
that. Talk to me about that. You're now in Europe. Now, is that I'm assuming that's a stepping stone that you wanted to take. Is it a big step up in quality expectations? Is it no different to what Melbourne Victory was? Like, firstly, how did you compare the two levels?
Yeah. So yeah, I was wanting to play in Europe. That was, yeah, kind of my next phase, I think. And obviously I'd spent a bit of time in the A League and had been pretty successful and felt that it was, yeah, the natural next step for me. And yeah, in terms of quality, I think the in possession is just like way more stressed upon over there. Keeping the ball, playing out of situations where I would probably personally kind of, look to go a little bit longer. They really encourage us to really play and pass our way out of certain situations. And for me as a player, like those are the areas of my game where I really wanted to improve was on the ball. I feel like, yeah, I had a lot of room to grow. Yeah, my strengths are definitely defensively. So I think, yeah, my composure, my like close ball control and, passing and heavily in possession um, attributes is what I want to improve and still want to improve actually. So yeah, I think Denmark was a good move in that sense. But quality wise, yeah, I would say the A League is, pretty close. It's just different styles. I would say here it's a lot more athletic and transitional. And up there it's very possession based. We don't do anywhere near as much running as we do here. We're on our third day of preseason and I'm, yeah, so buggered already. So yeah, it's just different style of play, which is, yeah, also what I wanted to be exposed to, and playing against different players. So yeah, I think that was a good move for me.
How much
And yeah,
how much research did you put in to that particular club or that particular league, right? So you said, they try to pass away a trouble, which for you personally would be a good evolution to parts of your game. Now, was that something
yeah.
you actively went and sought out, or was it just by luck? Like, speak about, leaving Victory to go, you could have gone anywhere, maybe not anywhere in the world, but different parts of the
Mhm.
world. How did you land on this particular club in this particular league?
Yeah, so I was actually talking with Daisy Cleverly because she was a player at the club and had been there for a year. And then yeah, she kind of put my name forward to them, and they are a very possession-based team, but with that, they've also had quite a big cohort of international players. And then Hobiku also won the league the season before I went. So yeah, they were known as quite a possession-based team, but also very athletic, which kind of, yeah, I think was a good blueprint for me as a player to head to a club like that. They play a very attacking style of football, similar to Victory. But yeah, I wanted that European exposure. And yeah, I did quite a bit of research on them, and then also spoke to Daisy quite a lot about her experience there. So I think, yeah, when I spoke to her and she said how much she enjoyed the club, yeah, that made me more confident to decide that yeah, I'm going to give this team a crack. And then yeah, now I'm back at Victory. I might be jumping the gun here a bit, Gareth, so you can stop me if need be. But yeah, I'm still really grateful that I went over, and I actually think I learned a lot. And yeah, I'm back here now, but I don't see it as a failure. Definitely not. And I would, yeah, love to head back to Europe eventually as well. So I think there's honestly nothing wrong with going for a year or two, coming back, resetting, and then going again. I think everyone has this perception that, football's meant to be like a linear incline. That's not the case at all. I think, yeah, success is going to come in waves, and sometimes a season where you're maybe not playing as much, you can still gain a lot from that, and you can still develop a lot. So yeah, that's kind of how I've been thinking the past 6 months, and kind of coincides with being a traveling reserve for the Olympics as well. Um, Not what I, had envisioned for myself, and not something that I strived for, but you know, football is a subjective game, and you're not always dealt the cards that you want to be dealt, and it's just about, yeah, making the most of the situation and ultimately just using it to become a better player. I think that's the main messaging I have.
Absolutely. Fellow Strive podcast guest Marco Rojas had three stints at Melbourne Victory. All right, so we expect
Hmm.
you to go overseas after this one and come back. But no, we spoke earlier about the connection that you and I had in order to maybe get you in front of the head coach at the time, Jeff. You just spoke about another type of connection, so a fellow teammate or a past teammate that has put you necessary in connection with the new club. So speak
Hmm.
about trying to not burn any bridges and keep all those doors open. Being a good teammate to people could help you out further down the track in areas that or equally being a dick to Daisy. She might have gone, no chance I'm going to help Claudia out in
Exactly.
her journey, right?
Yeah.
So it's been good people along the way. Um, Last question on this: what were some of the challenges that maybe you weren't prepared for, either through your development as a footballer, through national youth teams, through the step via the A League, or mentally or socially, that the next time you go back to Europe, okay, I've gone and experienced this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to nail this part that maybe I wasn't prepared for or wasn't aware of. Maybe is a better way to think about it.
Hmm.
That if somebody listening is about to go and make this leap abroad, that maybe they can learn from you.
Yeah, very, very good question. I would say, yeah, the last 6 months have been, yeah, quite challenging for me as a player for, the reasons I said, not playing at club, and, just, missing out on the Olympic team. It's really difficult and takes a toll on you mentally. This is what I'm paid to do. It's to play the sport that I love. And when I'm not playing, it becomes quite hard. So I think, as cliche as it sounds, like finding value in other things in your life is so important, because when football's not going so great, and if you're, purely relying on that as your indicator of your self-worth, you're just going to be on an absolute roller coaster. And I've learned that, it's not the most sustainable yeah, way of thinking. And there's going to be highs and lows at no matter what age I am and what stage I'm at in my career. So yeah, this is something that my parents have instilled in me from a very young age, and I owe them a lot of credit. Yeah, mum and dad keep banging on about, you need a life after football, and um, yeah, go to university, find your other passions in life. And yeah, I find when I'm also focused on those areas of my life, I feel more relaxed. And my football actually is a lot better as well. So yeah, just being a bit more all-rounded rather than just looking at myself and viewing myself as a footballer, even though that is a big part of my life. But yeah, eventually that chapter is going to come to a close. And yeah, I think focusing on like university, and I'm also quite a social person. So, you know, spending time with my friends, not talking about football also really helps as well.
Yeah, having that escape, right? That network of support people that aren't in your bubble, which is your job, and that's something I've personally struggled with. Um, when I sort of stopped playing football, or even when I started working first full-time job at Coastal Spirit, it was all encompassing. It was my job,
Yeah.
but I also played and I was coaching, and all my mates were football as well. And they were
Yeah.
football. I needed to get
It's
away
too
from
much.
it.
It's too much.
Have to create some sort of barrier and kind of be really diligent around. So I don't play pick up football, indoor football, five-a-side, futsal. I'd rather just say thanks but no thanks. I'll come and watch. I don't mind watching them, but I'm not going to play. I'd rather go for a
Mhm.
round of golf. I would rather go and hang out at the beach, just something that's not football. Yeah, you can sometimes you can't pick pick your friends,
Yeah.
but you can pick your activities. You mentioned mum and dad, and previously you spoke about your sister being, the kind of that bedrock when you landed here the first couple of years. You then moved over to Europe, and you're now back in Melbourne, and you're not living with your sister, right? So, how has your support network, even if you go back to FFDP and age group football through till now, how have they change their level of support, or is it the same? How often are you talking to them? What are you leaning on them for? And
Hmm.
has it sort of evolved over that kind of last 5 years? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think my parents are still big influences on my career and also just my life in general. We're a very close-knit family, and I'm really lucky that I value both of their opinions and have a good relationship with both of them. I understand that's not necessarily the case with everyone. Um, and yeah, my support with them has changed. I think as I've gotten older, I probably don't seek as much validation from them as I used to when I was younger. But yeah, when I do need it and when I do need the support, they're pretty open and willing. And yeah, something for me, like I said before, is yeah, not just talking about football, I think is a massive one. And my parents are both pretty busy, and they will only really bring it up if I start the conversation, which I'm hugely grateful for. Um, but yeah, I think as I've gotten older and um, yeah, spent more time in Ferns, I also really value like my teammates' opinions and their advice. So I've got a couple of really good friends. Malia Steinmetz is one of them, and Elite is also another. So I actually bounce off them quite a lot because we're living and doing the same thing. I've known them since I was probably like 5. And yeah, even outside of football, they're two of my best friends. So yeah, I think between like them and my family, they're the people that I turn to when I need support for anything.
Yeah, nice. And Elite, another FFDP graduate, I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
What would you
Yeah.
say that the strengths of your parents, your sister, those close friends? What are their strengths that they provide you? Are they all kind of share the same kind of trait? But like, what's the one thing that maybe they offer you more than your coaches, more than your other non-footballing friends, like people that are
Hmm.
right in the circle, right? What's the greatest strength that they possess?
Hmm. They're all very different. I think my sister has no idea about football, like at all. So no matter like if I have an absolute howler of a game, like she will still see me in the exact same way that she did before the game. Um, my parents and dad, to his credit, he's actually changed um, the way he's been supporting me because he's come from a footballing background. And at the start, he was quite involved and would always give me his opinion. But I kind of said to him, Dad, like, I don't really need that from you. I would rather just talk about it when I want to talk about it. So he's been really good. And he's, yeah, ever since I think we had that conversation when I was like 16. And ever since he's been sound. Um, and then, yeah, I think if I'm wanting like actual footballing advice, like people like Malia and Anna who are in the thick of it with me and who don't sugarcoat things, we're very honest with each other. If I'm wanting something a bit more, concrete, and if I maybe don't want to hear, um, yeah, I don't want them to sugarcoat it, they definitely won't. So, yeah, they all are a little bit different, but yeah, I appreciate their types of support hugely.
No, it's good. There's three things there. There's the ignorant bliss, your sister.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk football. I'm going to go spend my energy with her and we're going to do something completely different. You've got
Hmm.
the dad, and it's around timing. So, when am I ready for this chat? I had this conversation the other day with somebody about trying to set that parameter fairly early on. And as a
Hmm.
parent, being really conscious of when that timing, when the athlete, when the son, the daughter want to have this conversation. So, it's about trying to create that framework early on and know that,
Hmm.
hey, whenever you want to talk about it, I'm here. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to impart their perspective on you when you're not maybe in the mindset or head frame to do it. And then being really
Yeah.
honest. So having people that are going to tell you, they're going to call you out for your own shit when they need to, right? Like, and be blunt and brutal. And sometimes that's what's needed. And knowing which person or what support person gives me and what do I need at this point in time, and maybe kind of directing that. But having that diversity in that group, I think is a really important point. Hey,
Hmm.
Claude, I don't want to keep you up too late because we've got day 4 of preseason tomorrow. So
We do.
we'll move on to a quick fire question. So,
Cool.
can you set me and the audience a question for the week?
Okay, so my question is, have you connected with your support group this week?
Very nice. Probably not as much as I should, is my response to that. Give me a concept or idea that we can maybe test in our environments.
I was actually talking to Kayla about this. I don't know if we still do fines, but yeah, the coaches may be setting like an item that each player has to bring um, during the week, one day of the week, and then if there's a double up of that item, then those two people get fined.
Hmm, interesting.
Mm.
A book, movie, podcast that you can offer up the listeners for the week.
So Ali Wilson, another player. Sorry. We're watching Monsters on Netflix, and yeah, it's a crime doco and it's unbelievable. So recommend it.
Brilliant. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it away and you could change, I don't know, let you decide, what would you change?
What would I change? Okay. I hate warm-ups. So if we could just abolish warm-ups for training and I just magically am warm straight away, that is what I would do.
Wow.
100%.
I think a few people I would have done that too. If
Yeah.
I was still playing. Great one. One piece of advice that you were once given that you can share with us.
Be better than you were yesterday.
Nice. What is the thing that you are striving for today?
Um, the one thing that's on my mind is winning the championship and the Premier's Plate with Victory.
Yeah, that's what I'm striving for also. And finish us off with a quote for the week.
Live, laugh, love football. Is that all right? I can't think of anything else.
Brilliant. Very similar to Marco Rojas as well, actually. Hey, Bungie,
Oh,
this
really?
this,
Okay.
this has been great. I love having conversations with players who are fulfilling their dream. It's something I wanted to do as a young player was make professional and represent my country. So you're living my dream. It's great for me to learn insights as well that I can kind of apply in my environments, which you just so happen to be also a part of. So hopefully we can see some positive change there. But hey, people listening would have no doubt also glean some vital information, which hopefully they can help on their journey as well. So much appreciate your time.
No worries. Thanks, Gareth.
Thanks so much for sticking through to the end of this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could hit the like or share button so we can get these amazing insights out to other like-minded coaches, athletes, and parents. Cheers.